welcome to the channel. I'm back to break down this 9-game Saturday NBA DFS slate on DraftKings. Before we get into it, if you enjoyed the content at any point throughout this video, if you could please leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell, that would be greatly appreciated. And then a few things promo-wise before we get into it. I have released a NBA DFS package over here on Patreon. We can get access to my projections, my data sheet, my player stats, my team stats, my play context stats, core plays, injury impact insights, NBA Discord chat access, etc. I've been working real hard on that to try to develop some tools that are going to help you give an edge. The same tools that I use when I build my lineups, and just some stuff that I've learned from playing NBA DFS for over 4 years now that boils down to, of course, you have price tags, of course, you have minutes, of course, you have projections. I provide all that, but then you also have things like teams that struggle to defend, teams in transition, teams that excel in getting out in transition, things like that that you can break down statistically. And you can say, hey, I see this team's giving up a lot of points in transition. I see this team's getting out in transition and scoring a lot of points, and they're pushing the ball a lot. I want to target De'Aaron Fox because the Kings are facing the opposing team, which really struggles, and De'Aaron Fox is really good at transition. Something like that as an example. But point being, been working hard on that for you guys. Check that out if interested. Link below in the description. And with all that promo stuff out of the way, let's go ahead and start breaking down this slate today. So, if you played the Christmas slate yesterday, actually, just real quick, hopefully you played some Kyrie Irving because it was something I was really high on, and I had mentioned, Kyrie facing off against his former team in Boston. It's kind of like a narrative, and I was kind of laughing because it's like sometimes NBA turns into be a reality TV show with these guys and getting mad at their opposing teams, or someone tweets out something to another player and they get mad about that, and they come in with some extra juice ready to play the next game. And it's so true, and I think that we have some other similar spots in this slate, and then we do have some injuries. For once, some pretty significant injury news that's going to free up some salary space and some more spots. So if you can stay on track of the injury news today and you can keep up to date with all the stuff that's going on, I think you can have a real edge on this slate because there's going to be some good stuff and some good value options available to be able to jam in some studs. So with that being said, let's go ahead game by game. First game, Oklahoma City taking on Charlotte here at 7 o'clock. And when breaking this one down, this game comes in currently with a 216.5 over-under. So not exactly the fastest paced game in this one. It's looking to be, right now it's looking like the highest paced game on this slate comes in with about a 229 total. So this game, there's not a single over-under over 230 right now. So this slate, just to give you some, perspective as to what we're up against. But this one's definitely going to be the slowest and definitely comes in with, the lowest line. 216.5. The Oklahoma City are 3-point underdogs to Charlotte. And so that kind of speaks volumes as to, if we're really going to want to go here, it's going to probably come down to price tags. The guys in the upper price tags like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Gordon Hayward, Terry Rozier, and all those guys, they're great, but they're kind of priced appropriately, and they're playing at a very slow-paced game. So I'm not too sure that I'm interested in going there. In this one, really looking down the list, there's not anyone that stands out really too much in this one to me, to be honest. I would say the one guy you could possibly play is LaMelo Ball at 5'2", just because of his role off the bench, and because it's going to be a slow-paced game. A guy like LaMelo, who's only 5'2", in comparison to the other guys that are priced up at 6K or 2, might be able to actually blow away this price tag as far as tournaments are concerned. So he'd be the only one, honestly, I'm looking to in this game. And yeah, I'm really just not interested in anyone. So I guess that's a quick one to break down there. We'll move along to the second one, Cleveland, Detroit. This one was going to be interesting to see if Kevin Love plays, because he is listed as questionable. He missed the season opener on Wednesday due to a strained calf, but the hope is he'll be able to make his debut tonight. So got to keep an eye on him. If he's in and good to go, I'm definitely interested in him at 6'5". I think that's underpriced for him to start the season. And I think I would definitely be jamming him in some of my lineups because 6'5" is too underpriced for Kevin Love if he's a full go. So I'd have interest in him. Larry Nance got a big bump up to 6'8" because of Kevin Love being out last game. Kevin Porter Jr. is going to continue to be out, so that's going to open up some more minutes for Larry Nance. So you could still go there if you wanted. I'm sure he's going to have lower ownership than he did last time, but he also got a big price bump, and I had a lot more interest targeting him when he was in the mid 5K range or so. 6'8" is a pretty significant price increase, so I'm not all too interested in that. Andre Drummond, speaking of all those narratives and stuff that I was talking about at the beginning of the show with Kyrie, Andre Drummond gets to go and faced this Detroit Pistons team that shipped him out of town last time, so I'm sure he's going to have a little extra motivation in this one, and he comes in at 9-2. One of the best rebounders in the league, and he has to take on this Cleveland Cavaliers front court, which doesn't scare me. And when he's competing on the boards with guys like Larry Nance, if Kevin Love's back, that'll help them a little bit on the boards, but even then, not too worried about it. Because, I mean, Mason, you do have to factor in that Detroit does have Mason Plumlee on the defensive end, but I don't think that's going to slow down Andre Drummond. I mean, Mason Plumlee's a reasonable defender and a reasonable rebounder. It's not like he's a complete pushover, but I don't think he's going to slow down Andre Drummond. And then I mentioned the added motivation. I do think that Andre Drummond's a good play, bottom line. And then Derrick Rose, I do think is a good play at 6'6" for these Detroit Pistons, a guy that gets a ton of usage when he comes in. And whether he was in the six-man role or whether he's in the starting role, I still think that he's going to be getting a lot of on-ball action, a lot of shots, a lot of opportunities to be assisting. And I do think that at 6'6", his price tag's a little underwhelming, a little too cheap. So I do like him. As far as anyone else in the game, I had mentioned Mason Plumlee. I do have interest in Plumlee again. He was my top play opening night because he was 200 price. He was only 3.7. Now he's 4.8, so he did get a price increase, but I still think that's a little too cheap. He still grades out to be a pretty good play for me in my projections as of now. Of course, those will update as the day goes on, and we'll see where he lands as far as my priority in the end. But Mason Plumlee does seem to be still a little too underpriced in a starting role at only 4.8. You know, that's a pretty cheap price tag for a starting center that's going to be out there for around 30 minutes, upper 20 minutes. And that is pretty much all my interest in this one. Moving further along to the next game, Orlando at Washington. This is another injury news spot that we have to watch because Russell Westbrook is listed as questionable. Coach Scott Brooks said that the Wizards are yet to decide a resting plan for him, but they do plan on resting him in back-to-back sets. So whether they rest him in this one or whether they rest him in the next one is to be determined. So we're going to have to keep an eye on that one. But if Russell Westbrook is in, of course, he's a viable option. He had a big game in his first game with these Wizards, and I think he's going to continue, to get a lot of work. But if he's out, I mean, we could always have interest in Bradley Beal as is at a 9.3. I think he's a little underpriced. I think Bradley Beal has just as much upside as Russell Westbrook, and Russell Westbrook is 1,000 more than him. But if Russell Westbrook is out, that's a big bump for Bradley Beal. So Bradley Beal would become a priority on the slate because that means he's going to get all the volume. No more Russell Westbrook to battle with. So keep an eye on that one because that is big news. Moving further along, Nikola Vucevic is a big-time play at the center spot. If we're not paying down, there seems to be a lot of value at the center spot early on in the season. There's some mispriced guys, so I wouldn't be surprised if my lineup construction leads me towards a cheap center. But as we move along further in this slate, specifically with the Houston Rockets news of a bunch of guys being out, we'll get to that. But there might be some value plays that we can jam in there that we could pay up for a guy like Vucevic because he is an absolute fantasy point per minute beast. I love him every single time out. He's only 9.1. I could see his price tag getting up to 10K before the season's over because of how involved he's going to be in this offense. And he has to be defended by the likes of Thomas Bryant. So I'm not too concerned about Thomas Bryant stopping Nikola Vucevic. Thomas Bryant, not really a good defender. And I definitely do like Nikola Vucevic in this one. Aaron Gordon, another guy to have interest in who is a hit-or-miss play. I've mentioned this in the past. But it's true, Aaron Gordon, if you play him, he's most likely going to go out there and he's going to have either a snowflake in the DK Live app or he's going to have a nice little fire flame emblem next to his name because he's either going out there and just going off for a big game or he's kind of putting up a dud. So fair warning with that. However, I will say this Washington team doesn't have the best defense, and I definitely think that you could have interest in him. And then as far as just how this game goes in pace, we had mentioned there's not a lot of big totals on this slate, but this one does come in with a 228.5 over-under. So, that's tied for the highest total along with this Phoenix-Sacramento game that we'll get to later. 228.5 seems to be the top total on the slate. So just keep that in mind. This game is going to be one of the faster-paced games on the slate. So, of course, you're going to have interest in the guys that get the ball and they get a lot of volume. I do think that Terrence Ross is still too underpriced in that six-man role for this Orlando Magic team because he's only 4.5 and he's a guy that can come in and in low 20 minutes put up 30 DK points. So at 4.5, I do think he's underpriced. I do like playing him as well. And then it's interesting. We're gonna have to keep an eye on the Davis Bertans news as well as the Russell Westbrook news, as I already mentioned. But if those guys are out, that's gonna open up more minutes to guys like Ish Smith, Troy Brown Jr., So, unfortunately, a lot of pending news, a lot of stuff I can't say with certainty I'm interested, but if Russell Westbrook is out, that's going to bump up my interest in Ish Smith, who's only 5'4". He would become a good play, and then Troy Brown Jr. would also get a big bump at 4'3", and he would become a good play. So, unfortunately, can't just go ahead and give you the go on those guys yet because it is pending on other people being out, but those are my top plays in that one. Moving further along, Philly at New York. This one, we finally get some, some solidified studs. Not that the other ones weren't, but it's just a matter of if, like I said, Russell Westbrook being out, and then we have the Kevin Love news, that kind of thing. And this one, we know Joel Embiid's playing. We know that Ben Simmons is playing at the top. Joel Embiid comes in at 10-2. Taking on this New York team, he's going to be defended by Mitch Robinson. That doesn't concern me. And Joel Embiid, a guy that if you're paying up the center, is a very, very good fantasy point per minute producer. This guy can literally put up 2 fantasy points per minute out there on the floor if he gets hot. And he's getting rebounds, he's getting blocks, he's getting points, he can shoot from three. So Joel Embiid is definitely a big stat stuffer. Always got to have interest in him, and I'm not too concerned about this New York Knicks front court defense. I'm definitely not concerned. As far as the pace in this one's concerned, that's the only thing that could kind of limit my appeal, because when looking at the over-under, it is only a 217.5 total. So, I think you can still target guys in this game. It's just you're going to have to pick one or two. And, if Embiid's having a big game, he's just going to keep getting the ball. He's going to keep getting fed. So he would still be able to pay off that 10-2 price tag. It's just I would guess that his teammates in Ben Simmons, Tobias Harris, etc., those guys probably don't end up having a good game if Embiid does. So that's the kind of situation you're faced with here. Ben Simmons as well, same thing. He's going to get all the usage. He can get inside. I'm not worried about Ben Simmons. It's a guy that drives to the basket. He doesn't really have a perimeter shot, as I'm sure a lot of you know. So you need to target him against teams that struggle defending around the rim. And I do think that these Knicks are pretty easy to target around the rim with guys like Julius Randle and Mitch Robinson. I mean, Mitch Robinson does have a very impressive rep for blocking shots. He's not terrible defender in that sense, weak side and coming over and blocking shots. It's just on ball. I'm not too concerned about him. So, I mean, Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, guys that post up, you can definitely have interest in them. As far as on the Knicks side, there's really only two guys I'm interested in because they dominate the majority of the usage in the offense, and that's Julius Randle and RJ Barrett. So these are the two guys you would be playing, hoping for big games and hoping that they keep their team in the game, because this does come in with an 8.5 point spread. So they're 8.5 point underdogs to the Philadelphia 76ers. So as far as, on the Philadelphia side, the concern would be that this game turns into a blowout. And on the New York side, the same thing is kind of in play. But if it doesn't turn into a blowout, it's going to be because Julius Randle and RJ Barrett, they're the two usage studs. So you're playing both of them in this one if you're playing someone from the Knicks. And I do think that RJ Barrett could see his price tag creep up into the 7K range, similar to Julius Randle's later on in the season. So at 6'6", you could capitalize on that low price tag while you can. Moving on to the next one, Indiana at Chicago. This game comes in currently with a, 221 over-under, which is pretty respectable on the slate. As mentioned, there's not a lot of big totals in this one. And when looking at who I'm most interested in this one, Zach LaVine you could always play, but he got a big price bump because he was only 7.9 on opening night. Now he's 8.9. I'm not too sure that I'm looking to go there, honestly. Maybe, like I mentioned, there is going to be a lot of value, so I might find myself, as I'm building lineups, jamming in some of the value plays. Zach LaVine's able to be fit in my lineups pretty easily. But I'm not too interested in targeting, the likes of Victor Oladipo and Malcolm Brogdon on defense either. I think they could do a pretty good job of shutting down Zach LaVine. Domantas Sabonis is a guy that I'm interested in. He's a guy that I thought was underpriced opening night. He did get a price bump up into the 8.5. He was only at 7.4 on opening night, so he got a price bump up. However, I do think that this is a guy you could see up in the 9K plus range because he's just so involved on the glass, and he's very good around the rim. He gets rebounds. He'll get you some buckets. He'll even get you some assists. So Domantas Sabonis I do like at 8.5. I'm not too scared of this Chicago front court stopping him with guys like Lauri Markkanen and Wendell Carter Jr. Good offensive players, not really good defensive players. I think Sabonis could take advantage of that. Malcolm Brogdon at 7.4 is still a little underpriced, I'd say. I mean, it's tough. I would say I'm willing to target him without hesitation at 7.4, whereas if he was more so like 7.8, 7.9, I'd hesitate a little more in the high 7K range. So that's my point there. Guy very involved. He's going to get a ton of assists. His assist usage is through the roof. And he's going to get his shots as well. So I do have interest in him. Victor Oladipo, you get a slight price decrease down to a 6.8. So he's another guy you could be playing. Priority, I don't want to be saying play every single guy on the team, so you're really looking at price tags. I need some bonus. I think is underpriced. Brogdon and Oladipo are pretty appropriately priced. I would say the next spot I'm looking to, price tags wise, is Miles Turner and TJ Warren, because they're guys with similar upside that are only 6K, 6.2. So I'd probably lean them in a slow paced game, just trying to get some upside because of the price tags. On the Chicago side of the ball, the front court continues to be underpriced. Wendell Carter Jr. and Lauri Markkanen. Lauri Markkanen got a price bump up to 6'4", as he was only 4'8" on opening night, so he's not as underpriced as Wendell Carter Jr. is. I do think that Wendell Carter Jr. at 5'1" still is underpriced, and we're going to see him tick up towards the 6K range, so I'd capitalize on that one. Another slow-paced game. That's kind of a trend in this one. As we're going along, we're going to see there's going to be a few games that really stick out on this slate, just because not a lot of fast-paced games. So, but you can always dig into the price tag. You can always play those guys, like I mentioned, like a TJ Warren, as one-off, because they're not going to be as popular, and they could go off at the price tag, and then you get them at low ownership, and you get some tournament-winning upside. So that's the point there. Moving on to this game, Toronto at San Antonio. This game comes in at a 225.5 over/under. So once again, a pretty respectable total for the slate in the circumstances. As far as who I'm looking to in this one, it is only a 1.5 point spread, so the game's expected to stay close, which is always important when you're targeting this Toronto team with guys like Pascal Siakam, Kyle Lowry, Fred VanVleet. The Toronto team, a very deep team that, if they're blowing out teams, of course, they're not going to get the upside from these guys. But in this game, which is expected to stay close, that's when I'm excited to target a guy like Pascal Siakam, because Pascal Siakam is a very versatile player. Honestly, a guy that I would say the average NBA fan may not know as much about as they should, because this guy is really, really good at basketball. I mean, he'll block shots, he'll rebound shots, he can shoot from the arc, he can drive to the hoop. A very good physical stature player. You get the gist of it. So Pascal Siakam, a guy that I'm always looking to target in close games at 8.2, he could definitely blow that price tag away. Same rule applies for DeMar DeRozan on the other side. Speaking of narratives, DeMar DeRozan, I mean, this is a year plus we're talking now. I know he'll always love Toronto, but he did get shipped out from Toronto, a place he wanted to stay at, to the San Antonio Spurs. And I think anytime he plays the Toronto Raptors, the hashtag revenge game narrative can come into play a little bit, just because he wants to go out and play good against them. I don't think it's necessarily a hatred thing like a lot of players. Sometimes they get really, really mad at their team. Of course, it was at first. I think it's all love with him in Toronto now. But anyways, that's just talking drama nonsense. But you do have to kind of dig into that sometimes. It'll help you find some more plays with some extra motivation. So I do think DeMar DeRozan is a good play. Fred VanVleet, Kyle Lowry at 7.3 and 7.6 are good plays. So it really comes down to playing Siakam, Lowry, and Fred VanVleet on the Toronto side. You could play OG Anunoby at 5.4. He definitely could blow away that price tag on DraftKings. I think I would tend to play him a little more on a site like FanDuel, where you get a lot of points for blocks and steals. That's more so his role in this team, is the defensive side of the ball. But the last guy that I will mention is Chris Boucher, who is 5'3", and a guy that, if you've played fantasy for a while now, Chris Boucher is a very good fantasy point per minute producer. He can go out there and go off. Not the best on the defensive side. He's a little bit skinny, facing the likes of LaMarcus Aldridge and that kind of deal, with a more bigger veteran big man. So Boucher still adding some muscle, but with that being aside, his fantasy point per minute and his production, he can go off in very short spurts. So I do like him. And then on the San Antonio side, the last guy I mentioned, and probably my favorite play in this game, is LaMarcus Aldridge, just with this price tag and everything. At 6'9", I think LaMarcus Aldridge could blow this price tag away. So I would have interest in playing him. Favorite play for the price tag, definitely LaMarcus Aldridge, 6'9". All right, moving further along, we got 3 more games. We're going to talk about all these, and some of the best games are the last ones on the slate, so stay tuned to that, because we're going to be breaking that down. This last game, not the last game, but this game, Minnesota-Utah. This game comes in with a 227.5 over under. 8-point underdogs are the Minnesota Timberwolves, so you could have a little bit of concern as a blowout, but if it's not going to be a blowout, you know where the production is going to come from. It all starts with Karl-Anthony Towns and D'Angelo Russell, so Cat at the top at 10K. I don't know if I'm really looking to go here, because he does have to face the defense of Rudy Gobert. Rudy Gobert is one of the best defenders in the league, so I'd actually have more interest in Rudy Gobert on the other side. But D'Angelo Russell, I'm not too scared about the defense of Mike Conley or Donovan Mitchell. It's not like they're the worst defenders in the world, but D'Angelo Russell, a guy that has a lot of ball handling skills and or can create his shot or distribute. D'Angelo Russell is the full package, and I think at 7.7 he is underpriced. I think if he could blow that price tag out of the water for sure. Ricky Rubio, you could have interest in at 6.3. Once again, though, I'd lean D'Angelo Russell for sure. And then the other guy I want to mention, Jordan Clarkson at 5.3 for the Utah Jazz. As the sixth man in this team, can come in and go off as well. I have mentioned this a lot. Don't always play the starters, guys, because bench players can come in and get more usage than the starters. When you play a guy like Jordan Clarkson and he doesn't have to play alongside Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert, and he comes in and he can just shoot, he can give you a high upside at a cheaper price tag. So that's the appeal of playing Jordan Clarkson. And then as far as anyone else in this game, not all too interested. You could play Malik Beasley because he's a guy that's similar to Clarkson in the sense that he come in and chuck when they take out guys like D'Angelo Russell and like Karl Anthony Towns. I did see some news on Malik Beasley, but it's looking like he's still playing. I guess he was entering a guilty plea in court earlier this week. But it's looking like there's not going to be any disciplinary action as of now. So as far as, just breaking him down from a fantasy aspect and at the 5.8 price tag and the matchup and his usage, he is a very good play. Moving further along, Donovan Mitchell at 8.4. I just have to mention him before we leave. I think he's a decent play. It's just a matter of the value that opens up because I do think there's some other guys around this range that I might want to prioritize. So he's unfortunately a little bit up in the air. He's just in that 8K price tag where he's kind of in no man's land right now without knowing the value that we can fit in around him. And with the 8-point spread, I think that maybe he's on the bench a little bit earlier in this one than some other players on his team. But yeah, he's a tough one to promote as of now. But if we get a bunch of value, which we're going to break down right now because this Houston team, there's some big news coming out with the COVID-19 issues that they're having. There's going to be a bunch of guys out, and that is going to open up some very good value for us and some of the top plays on the slate for sure. Looking at the guys that are going to be out, John Wall, Eric Gordon, DeMarcus Cousins, Ben McLemore. And yeah, that's pretty much, the significant ones, but that's a lot of guys. So at the top, James Harden, the best play on the slate, not even a question. All those guys out, and he's available to play. So that means James Harden could literally shoot 30 times, and I'm not exaggerating. This guy could just be going out there and chucking it. He could shoot 40 times. I mean, it really wouldn't surprise me anything that happens. This guy's going to be just playing pickup basketball out there, chucking it, doing whatever he's want. Not to mention James Harden, he isn't happy in Houston. He wants out, and you would think that might mean that he's not going to try as hard, but I also kind of think that's going to mean he's probably going to play a little more selfish in this particular case where his whole team's out. He's just going to be like, I don't care about any of you guys. I'm just going to get mine, and next thing you know, James Harden has 50 points. So that's kind of where I'm leaning. Definitely the top play on the slate by far. And I'm hoping, if you get if James Harden comes in at like 50% in tournaments, you might be like, oh, wow, that's chalk. I'm going to look at it as I am so much smarter than 50% of the people in this tournament because I don't know. You just can't fade guys in the spot. He's only 10.9. He's not even in the 11K range. I mean, of course, it's only 100 off, but yeah, if you get him at 50%, typically you would say, wow, that's massive chalk, but I'm just going to be looking at it as 50% of people just don't get it because James Harden's that good of a play. Do not fade him, play him, unless there's some news that they're limiting him or there's some discipline or he's done something wrong to the team and management. So far, there's none of that. He's going to be out there a ton of minutes. He's going to shoot a ton. Just play him. Don't even think twice about it. Moving along to the other side, and there's no lines released on this game yet, understandably, because of all the injuries and stuff, so I can't really touch on the spread or over-under or anything like that, but Damian Lillard, CJ McCollum, Yusuf Nurkic on the other side are good plays, Robert Covington, Carmelo Anthony. You do have a little bit of a revenge game there. I'm just interested to see the point spread. I got a feeling, Portland's going to be a pretty significant favorite in this one with all the injuries. Carmelo Anthony, you do get a revenge game as well. Ride this narrative because Carmelo was not happy with Houston. They kind of just gave up on him and released him. And then he signed on to Portland and proved, he's still got a little bit of talent. He can still play in the league. So I do think that we got another narrative here with Carmelo, and it's a valid one that actually has some reasoning. He was not happy with Houston. They didn't even give him a reason as to why they let him go. They just kind of let him go. So Melo, another narrative play for you. And then there's definitely some really good other plays on the Houston Rockets. I'm going to be jamming these guys in, so, it's kind of obvious to me, but to other people it might not be. And like I said, these guys should be really, really high owned, and if they're not, people just don't get it. Christian Wood, a tremendous play. This guy is a fantasy point per minute beast, absolute stud when it comes to fantasy. He's only 5'9". This guy's going to blow that price tag away so easily, it's not even funny, so he's a big priority for me. PJ Tucker you could play. PJ Tucker, unfortunately, isn't a very good fantasy point per minute producer, but he just plays a ton of minutes. He's good on defense. He gets a ton of boards. And they're going to need his defense taking on Nurkic and the big fella down low. So also a guy that can get some corner threes for you. So you're hoping that he gets hot from the corner. Daniel House Jr., another guy, because no Ben McLemore. You got to be playing him at only 4.7. He's going to blow this price tag away. All these guys are the most obvious plays on the slate, but for good reason. They're all just way too underpriced with the news coming out. Daniel House, PJ Tucker, Christian Wood. Christian Wood definitely my favorite. And then on the cheap end, I love Sterling Brown. You can play David Nwaba as well. Sterling Brown's definitely my favorite option. At only 3.2, you talk about blowing a price tag away. This guy is going to 10x his price tag at 3.2. He's just way too underpriced. He's a pretty talented player. He just didn't get a lot of opportunity in Milwaukee because of how deep they are and how good the Milwaukee Bucks are. But now that he's over in Houston, and with all these injuries in this one, Sterling Brown is going to absolutely blow that price tag away. If he's not 70% owned in tournaments, I'm not complaining because that's just an easy play. David Nwaba, same thing. I think he's a valid option as well at only 3K. So all these cheapies, all these studs, I think this is going to be a easy stars and scrubs build slate, and I'm excited for it because I love those slates. You can just jam in all these top guys like James Harden and Karl Anthony Towns or whoever else you want to play at the top, and feel good about your lineups, whatever the case is. All the high price guys, you get my point. And lastly, the Phoenix Suns taking on the Sacramento Kings. This game once again tied for the top total on the slate, a 228.5 over under in a 3.5 point spread. So they're expected to keep this game close, both sides. And who I am interested in this one, once again, I mean, the usage is pretty condensed, which makes it nice. You're looking at Devin Booker, De'Aaron Fox, DeAndre Ayton, Chris Paul, Buddy Hield, Marvin Bagley, really. And then you do have some cheaper options like Jay Crowder and Harrison Barnes that you could throw in just because of their price tag. So it makes sense. The high upsides guy. Devin Booker is 9.8, so he is priced pretty appropriately. Could he go out there and put up 70? Absolutely, but he's going to have to at 9.8. However, with that being said, like I mentioned, we got a bunch of value on the slate, so it might be a situation where this is one of the faster games on the slate. Devin Booker has one of the highest usages in the game, so it makes sense to be throwing him. Same rule applies to De'Aaron Fox. I like De'Aaron Fox a lot better in comparison with his price tag sort of deal. He's a big-time play at 8.7 in this one. Like him a lot. He's the face-off against Chris Paul defense, but I'm not too concerned about that. Speaking of Chris Paul, he's only 7.5. I like him. A big price down from Devin Booker. So if you can't put in Devin Booker, Chris Paul is a great, they're 1A, 1B, so Chris Paul would be a great 1B option. Buddy Hield, love him at 7.1. He's priced pretty appropriately to the point of where he could let you down, but Buddy Hield gets hot from 3, and he's going to be putting up 50 DK points pretty quick in an up-tempo game. So I do like Buddy Hield. Not to say, I like every single player, but to be honest with you, that's kind of the case because of just how slow the other games are and how up-tempo this one is. Guys that are getting, 20 minutes in this one could compare to guys that are getting 30 minutes in a game with a 212 total. This one has a 230, so that's just the nature of the beast. So I hate to say just play this guy, play this guy, but honestly it comes down to which lineup you built, how much salary you have left, and if you only have 5.7, you can play Harrison Barnes in an up-tempo game. It makes sense, or Marvin Bagley. That's just what I'm getting at here. My favorite options on the cheap end of this one, I do think that the front court is still underpriced for Sacramento and Sacramento. Sorry, I meant to say Rashawn Holmes and Hassan Whiteside, because both of these guys are low 4K range. They didn't get a ton of minutes last time out, but they're playing DeAndre Ayton in this one, so they're going to need the size out there unless this game just goes completely small. But Rashawn Holmes, a guy that won't get run off the floor anyways. He's a pretty athletic big. And same rule applies for Hassan Whiteside. And Hassan Whiteside could see some bigger minutes considering he's the taller of the two, and DeAndre Ayton is a more of a traditional 7-footer type build. So both of those guys are still underpriced, and I could see them definitely blowing away their price tag. So they're the cheap options at center. Are we going to need to go there with how much value we have? And could we pay up for another center with a ton of upside like a Nikola Vucevic or something like that? Probably. So those are the things you're going to have to be asking yourself on this slate. And that is a total breakdown of the slate. Excited for this one. Like I said, a ton of value. It's going to be fun building lineups. If you enjoyed the content, if you could please leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, that would be greatly appreciated. And then if you're interested in my extra content over there on Patreon, all those tools I've been working so hard on, my projections, all that fun stuff, that's linked below in the description. Appreciate you guys tuning into this one. I wish you all the best of luck on this Saturday NBA DFS slate, and we will see you in the next one.